Everyone and their Tauntaun agrees that Irvin Kershner's 1980s sequel, The Empire Strikes Back, is the best Star Wars. For a while, I didn't get it myself. The film is full of the kind of surprises and reveals that are engaging the first time you see them, but slow down the pace on the rewatch. For a while, I thought Return of the Jedi felt more like a true sequel to Star Wars. It had more aliens, more planets, more adventure. But on my most recent rewatch, I really focused on structure, and I unlocked Empire's true genius. I was wrong. Empire really is the best Star Wars, and one of the best popular films of all time. Stick around, because I'm about to explain why. This is Equipment for Living with The Empire Strikes Back. Alright, get your bearings. Empire is about a heroic fighter pilot called Luke Skywalker. In the previous film, which I've also broken down, Luke got in touch with a magic field called the Force, but he still has a lot of untapped potential, not to mention some unresolved romantic desires. High on the successes of the previous film, his job and goal are now the same thing: defeat the Empire. Defeat the scourge of evil oppressing the galaxy. Released 3 years after the overwhelmingly triumphant Star Wars, Empire immediately throws fans a frosty curveball. After the opening crawl, the film reintroduces us to Luke in a frigid wasteland. Shot on location in Norway, the cold is palpable. Later, Luke describes the dark side cave as being cold. The film is immediately immersing us in evil. Barely 4 minutes in, Luke is clobbered by a wampa and dragged off helpless. It has long been speculated that this moment was written thus to account for the change in actor Mark Hamill's nose between movies. Just before the release of Star Wars, Hamill took a freeway exit late while speeding, crashing his car and smashing his nose. Plastic surgery following his injuries couldn't quite return his nose to the way it was in Star Wars, or so the story goes. Ice monsters were in the drafts from the beginning, in Lee Brackett's first draft before she suddenly died, but they were only vaguely described. So maybe some or none of this is true, I don't know, I just work here. Anyway, Luke's face is mauled, and then we cut to Echo Base, where the rebels have set up their shingle. Fan favourite Han Solo acts as a secondary protagonist in this film, and he is reintroduced properly here, bantering with Wookiee co-pilot Chewbacca. Reporting to General Riken, Han receives the film's theme.
A death mark's not an easy thing to live with.
Riken is referring to the bounty on Han's head, but this statement is universally true. We're all going to die, and we're all going to suffer because of evil. This film will be an essay on the many ways malevolence will make your life hard, and explores how best to live regardless. On his way to pay off his debt to Jabba the Hutt, Han locks horns with Leia. Luke is missed, and Han goes out to find him. Luke, meanwhile, reconnects with the Force to get himself out of Dodge, disarming the Wampa in the process. Sadly, this Wampa has whumped its last, but its family gets revenge in Shadow of the Empire. The rebels close the blast door, and there is an eerie chill in the audience's bones. At minute 13, Luke has a vision of old Ben, who died at the low point of the previous film. This is the call to adventure. Luke can't achieve his potential as a Jedi if he just keeps hanging around on ice planets getting mauled by miscellaneous wildlife all day. Ben tells Luke to go to the Dagobah system. The rest of Act 1 will revolve around the tension of trying to fulfill this command. Han finds Luke and stuffs him into a Tauntaun to prevent hypothermia. Incidentally, do you know what the temperature is inside a Tauntaun? It's lukewarm. Sorry. Luke is rescued, his face is rebuilt, and he's fished out in time to face the Empire, which is currently striking back after its defeat in Star Wars. This is the main thing preventing Luke from answering the call to adventure. Echo Base has been detected, and the Emperor is throwing a mighty ground force at it. This is a complete inversion of the previous film. In Star Wars, the third act took place largely in the black of space and had the good guys besieging the bad guys. In Empire, the first act takes place entirely in the white of Hoth and the bad guys are besieging the good guys. And where the good guys have a resounding victory in Star Wars, here they barely get away. And this is the last whiff of triumph we're getting for the rest of the film. Why? Because this is a film about dealing with evil. It also functions as the second act in a trilogy, and we know that second acts progressively challenge the protagonist. So the film needs to be cold, it needs to be dark, it needs to be emotionally difficult. The rebels escape from series antagonist Darth Vader in the nick of time, and our two protagonists separate. Luke finally sets a course for Dagobah, resolving the tension introduced by the call at minute 13. This moment, 36 minutes, or exactly 30% in, is the break into Act 2. The honeymoon after this act break is where Empire starts to get really interesting. The parallel journeys of Luke and Han work together to adumbrate the film's theme. Where Star Wars was about achieving freedom through transcending the self, Empire is about dealing with evil. Think of evil as something that works to ruin your life. Luke's time with Yoda in Act 2 will teach us how to resist evil, and Han's misadventures in Act 2 will teach us 3 forms that evil can take. At the start of Act 2, Han et al. Are beset by the Empire. This shows us that evil can come at you from your enemies. Han takes shelter in a cave on an asteroid. We cut back to Luke, who meets Yoda on Dagobah. Yoda is the character to speak most explicitly to the protagonist about the theme, so he constitutes the B character here, and he shows up at minute 47, or 39% in. Yoda embodies the wisdom he delivers. He's unassuming, disarming, patient, a pacifist, and above all, he has an unshakable self-belief. Yoda reluctantly agrees to train Luke, and we cut back to Han. Here we receive the second of 3 lessons from Han's journey. The cave turns out to host a space slug that nearly crushes the Millennium Falcon. This shows us that evil can come at you from nature. Yoda trains Luke, and soon we get a very special midpoint. Starting at minute 61, 50.8% in, Yoda begins warning Luke about the dark side of the Force.
Once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. Consume you it will, as it did Obi-Wan's apprentice, Vader.
Luke seeks to confront this source of evil, a nearby cave. Against Yoda's advice, he takes in his weapons. In the cave, he faces a dreamlike version of Darth Vader. He cuts Vader down, but finds that inside that iconic helmet, it's him. This incredible midpoint echoes back and forth throughout this trilogy, and it foreshadows the deepest wisdom this film has to offer, which we'll get to near the end. And then things get worse. Vader commissions bounty hunters to track down Han, incidentally providing fodder for streaming shows 4 decades later. Luke fails to raise his crashed X-Wing from out of the swamp. He doesn't have enough faith in himself. One of the bounty hunters tracks Han as he escapes the Empire yet again. Luke receives a premonition of danger and becomes distracted from his training. Han meets up with fellow scoundrel Lando Calrissian in Cloud City, where 3PO promptly gets blown to smithereens. And at minute 83, 69% in, Luke abandons his training. This constitutes the low point. Usually this moment has something happening to the protagonist, which pushes them further away from their goal than they've ever been. Here, it's Luke's choice to leave his training that pushes him further away from his own goal. Yoda has failed to teach Luke patience, pacifism, and self-belief. In the soul-searching stretch following this moment, we get the third and final lesson from Han's story. Lando betrays Han to Vader, and Han is tortured. This shows us that evil can even come at you from your friends. Chewie sets about rebuilding 3PO, but there's no saving Han. He is frozen in carbonite. As he goes in, we get a glimpse of the thing that kept him going up against all that evil, his love for Leia. By this point, we've learned all we're going to learn from Yoda. His job, which you'll notice ran from the B beat through the midpoint to the low point, was to equip Luke with the lessons he needed to pass the final exam. But Yoda failed. Luke left before he was ready. He's still the brash, impulsive youth from the previous film. So as he steps into the final exam of Act 3, 97 minutes or 80.8% in, we are worried. He storms the castle in the cloud, seeking his princess. She warns him it's a trap, but he goes in anyway. He meets Vader, and Luke is the first to ignite his lightsaber. He is failing the exam already. Yoda taught him that a Jedi only strikes in defense. The fight goes on, becoming increasingly desperate. Leia and Lando engineer their escape, but in stark imagery, Luke is defeated by Vader, losing his hand in the process. At minute 110, 91.7% through, we get this iconic reversal.
I am your father.
Let's back up a little. Throughout multiple cultures, the father symbolizes that which is passed from one generation to the next. Traditions, laws, customs, things like that. In the context of stories, fathers represent the versions of us that preceded us. But the continuity is important. Fathers and children are versions of each other. Another way to say this is that whatever is in your father is born into you as well. We've already learned that evil can come at you from your enemies, that evil can come at you from nature, and that evil can even come at you from your friends. We now learn what Yoda was trying to teach Luke all along, that evil can come at you from within yourself. The greatest evil in the entire galaxy flows in Luke's veins. This is the most insidious form of evil, so it's saved for the film's climax. But it was hinted at earlier, both in the midpoint and at the low point. Remember that Luke was the one who chose to leave his training, to inflict the greatest blow to his own success. So how does our protagonist respond to this reversal? He failed the test, and now his only option seems to be to join Vader in darkness. But there's always one other option, and it's the one Luke chooses. He chooses pacifism and self-assurance. He would rather die than succumb to the evil coursing in his own heart. He falls from heaven a beaten man and is picked up by Leia. Lando's protestations here are the final cherry on the thematic cake.
It's not my fault!
The most heartbreaking thing about the tragedy of evil is that it is largely arbitrary, especially the evil that beset Han throughout this movie. The evil that Luke now contends with in his own heart, that's a different story. Luke gets a robot hand, and the movie ends on a bittersweet note of majesty. And that's it. Han is as good as dead. Luke failed his training. The Empire won this round. But winning isn't everything. Losing teaches you a lesson. I absolutely love the structuring of the theme in Empire. The way it introduces the narrowing circle of evils, starting with your enemies, going through nature, going through your friends, and ending up with you, is just so satisfying. It functions as the perfect second act to Star Wars' first. Previously, we learned how to attain true freedom. Now we're learning how to cope with the evil that threatens that freedom. And this film, in its grand fairy tale adventure, teaches us that lesson with aplomb. The real problem with evil is that it lurks in all of us, even you and me, and it's really easy to succumb to it, to be selfish, to abuse power, to manipulate others. Tying in with the previous film's theme, to be truly free, we need to understand that evil lives within us, to come to terms with it, and to learn not to be seduced by it. To understand that self-belief defeats self-doubt, patience defeats recklessness, violence should only be used for self-defense, and that love can make it all worthwhile. This film teaches us those lessons, and that's what makes The Empire Strikes Back among the best equipment for living you can get your hands on. Thanks for watching this breakdown of what I hope you'll now agree is clearly the best Star Wars. If you found it insightful, please leave a thumbs up. If my ramblings have stoked an insight in you, I'd love to read it in the comments. And if you'd like to see more movie breakdowns, click subscribe and ring the bell icon to make sure you don't miss a single video. For example, would you like to see more Star Wars? Once I've done Jedi, what should I do next? The prequels or the sequels? Let me know in the comments below.